Genesis Station did not orbit a star so much as it negotiated with one. The research world drifted along the outer seam of a pale blue giant, harvesting radiation for its laboratories while maintaining a polite, calculated distance from annihilation. From the observation decks, the star looked calm and benevolent. From the engineering reports Zachary Hunt occasionally skimmed, it looked like a simmering argument with gravity. Zachary preferred microscopes to stars. Stars were dramatic, microscopes were honest. He leaned over a hollow slab in Laboratory Wing C, watching lines of alien blood chemistry scroll across the display in shimmering layers of color. Genesis Station processed thousands of biological samples a week. Human colonists, Martian miners, diplomats from aquatic worlds who insisted on bringing their own humidity, and the Ailiri delegation who treated every medical screening as if it were a sacred rite. Routine cross-species metabolic panel, Zachary muttered, tapping a sequence to initiate the resonance scan. Because nothing says diplomatic trust like exchanging blood. The centrifuge beside him hummed softly, its magnetic bearings suspending vials in perfect suspension. Above him, a lattice of sterilization drones drifted like patient metallic jellyfish, bathing the room in ultraviolet light. The lab smelled faintly of antiseptic and synthetic citrus, a scent chosen by committee and universally disliked. He liked it anyway. It smelled like predictability. The Ailiri samples were the last in his queue. Their blood shimmered faintly under standard lighting, carrying trace bioluminescent proteins that responded to electromagnetic fields. Zachary adjusted the scanner's frequency to accommodate their unique hemocyanin structures. He had memorized the calibration by heart. If there were medals for adjusting alien wavelengths without complaint, he would have earned at least a polite ribbon. He initiated the compatibility subroutine required for diplomatic exchange. The Ailiri insisted on running their sacred mate bond screening alongside any general health evaluation. Officially, it was a cultural accommodation. Unofficially, it meant Zachary had to double-check algorithms older than some planetary governments. He sipped his coffee, burned, bitter, and aggressively human, and watched the results cascade. Most pairings across species yielded nothing but static, a polite incompatibility, a scientific shrug. Then the display flickered. A harmonic spike rose across the interface. Not as noise, but as pattern. The resonance graph did not merely align, it locked. Two molecular signatures, one labeled AELYRI, royal subject, Mara, one labeled Hunt, Zachary, interwove in luminous symmetry. Zachary blinked. That's not how that works. He leaned closer, as if proximity would shame the machine into behaving. The protein binding simulation continued, predicting stabilization pathways, neural hormone congruence, immune system complementarity. The compatibility index did not hover near the threshold. It exceeded it by a margin large enough to make statisticians reconsider their career choices. He tapped the screen. The numbers did not retreat. Okay, he murmured. Either the universe is playing a joke, or someone spiked my coffee with ambition. He reran the sample. The centrifuge obediently recalibrated. New vials rotated into alignment. The station's central AI, polite and mildly judgmental, confirmed sample integrity. No contamination detected, no mislabeling, no cosmic prank noted in the system logs. The harmonic spike returned, brighter this time, as if proud of itself. Zachary leaned back in his chair and stared at the ceiling, where a soft projection of the nearby star pulsed in decorative calm. You had one job, he told the universe. Remain indifferent. A chime echoed through the lab. Incoming presence. Ailiri Royal Authority. He sat up straighter. Of course she would arrive now. Queens, he suspected, had an instinct for inconvenient timing. The doors parted with a whisper of compressed air. Queen Mara entered not with theatrical flourish, but with precise, measured grace. Her attendants remained outside, a silent wall of silver armor and disciplined posture. She wore no helmet. Her dark hair fell in controlled waves around a face that would have been entirely human if not for her ears. Long, elegant, tapering to fine points that curved slightly backward. They gave her silhouette an otherworldly symmetry, as if evolution had drawn her with an extra stroke of intention. Her eyes moved first to him, then to the display hovering between them. "Technician Hunt," she said. Her voice was low, controlled, almost musical. "You have completed the analysis?" "Yes, Your Majesty," he replied, resisting the urge to salute with a pipette. "Routine screenings. Everything appears structurally stable. No pathogens, no alarming anomalies. Your immune system continues to outperform ours in ways that make us mildly insecure." She did not smile. Illyri royalty did not smile easily, but one of her ears tilted a fraction, a gesture he had learned indicated curiosity. "And the resonance screening?" she asked. Zachary hesitated for half a heartbeat. "Also completed. Display it." He turned the hollow slab toward her. The harmonic graph flared into visibility, twin strands of biochemical codes spiraling together like synchronized galaxies. The compatibility index glowed at the top of the interface in unmistakable brilliance. For a moment, the lab was silent, except for the faint hum of the station's life support systems. Mara stepped closer. The bioluminescent threads of her blood sample seemed to respond to her presence, brightening subtly on the screen. "This is incorrect," she said softly. "I ran it twice," Zachary offered. "Machines are stubborn, but generally not imaginative." Her gaze sharpened. "Run it again." He complied, fingers moving with professional speed. The system cycled through verification protocols, cross-referenced DNA markers, recalculated protein resonance. Each step confirmed the previous result with increasing statistical confidence. The harmonic lock returned. Mara inhaled slowly. For the first time since he had met her, her composure fractured, not dramatically, but perceptibly. The stillness around her shifted, like the calm surface of water disturbed by a stone. "This level of congruence," she murmured more to herself than to him, "is recorded only in bonded pairs." "Bonded pairs," he repeated carefully, as if testing unfamiliar grammar. She looked at him then, fully, as though seeing him not as a technician, but as a variable in an equation she had not intended to solve. "Among my people," she said, "such resonance is the mark of a sacred mate. It is not approximate. It is absolute." Zachary blinked. "With respect, Your Majesty, I assure you we have not been secretly married." Her eyes narrowed slightly. "This is not humor." "It's either humor or existential panic," he replied. "I default to humor. It's cheaper." She studied him in silence. The station's artificial gravity hummed faintly beneath their feet. Outside the viewport, the blue star continued its patient burn, indifferent to biochemistry and royal crises alike. "You are certain of your identity?" she asked. "I checked this morning," he said. "Still Zachary Hunt, mildly undercaffeinated human." Her gaze flicked back to the display. "Your blood chemistry matches mine in perfect harmonic symmetry. By Illyri law and science, that indicates preordained union." "Preordained," he echoed. "That's a strong word for something that fits in a test tube." "It does not fit in a test tube," she said quietly. "It fits in our history." He swallowed, the weight of her words settling around them. "Well," he said after a moment, "history might need to schedule an appointment, because I promise you, Your Majesty, I processed this sample expecting mild anemia, not matrimony." One of her ears twitched again, almost imperceptibly. If that was not amusement, it was at least recognition of absurdity. "This is impossible," she said. Zachary glanced at the glowing interface, at the elegant intertwining of alien and human code. "Yes," he agreed gently. "That's what I said." The silence in the laboratory did not break so much as it rearranged itself. Queen Mara remained standing before the hollow display, her reflection splitting across layers of luminous data. The harmonic strands pulsed in slow, synchronized waves, indifferent to doubt. Zachary resisted the urge to wave a hand through the projection just to see if it would scatter like smoke. It did not look scatterable. "This chamber is secure?" she asked at last. "Sterile, shielded, and monitored only by the station's core AI," Zachary replied. "And it's very bad at gossip." "I do not require reassurance about gossip," she said. "Good, because I can't promise the humans won't make some up anyway." Her eyes shifted toward him again. There was calculation in her gaze now, not shock. The initial fracture in her composure had sealed into something sharper, a ruler regaining footing. You will explain the full mechanism of this scan, she said. In detail. He gestured to the hovering interface. The resonance algorithm compares your species' bonding protein clusters with potential harmonic complements. It looks for electrochemical symmetry across 47 markers, immune compatibility, neuropeptide alignment, mitochondrial efficiency, and a few things we still don't fully understand, but pretend we do in conferences. And it has identified you, she said. Yes, which is frankly inconvenient. I had other plans today. Her ear tilted slightly again. He was beginning to suspect that was the Aeleri equivalent of an eyebrow raise. You treat this lightly, she observed. I treat most things lightly until they start throwing furniture, he said. It's a coping strategy. Mara stepped closer to the projection. The bioluminescent threads brightened faintly in response to her proximity, as if recognizing their origin. Zachary adjusted the display, magnifying the overlapping sequences. Where human hemoglobin patterns would normally remain chemically aloof, here they seemed to interlock with Aeleri protein spirals in improbable symmetry. Among my people, she said slowly, this resonance is not theoretical. It is the foundation of our pair bonding structure, the sacred convergence. That sounds like a band, Zachary muttered. She ignored that. When two Aeleri profiles align at this magnitude, it is considered predetermined. The bond is believed to be written into our biochemistry before birth. Before birth, he repeated. That's impressive planning. It is not planning, it is destiny. He rubbed the back of his neck. With respect, Your Majesty, destiny usually doesn't come with a confidence interval. This one does, she said quietly, tapping the display. 99.998%. That's statistically aggressive. She turned toward him fully now. You do not believe in predetermined bonds. I believe in coffee, he said, and in peer review, and in the fact that I have never met you outside of medical screenings. You have now, she said. Yes, but under circumstances that would make any romance algorithm file a complaint. For a fleeting second, her lips curved. Not quite a smile, but something close enough to register. It softened her features, made her seem less distant, though her long ears retained their elegant, otherworldly poise. You are aware, she continued, that if this result is verified, Aeleri law will consider you my bonded consort. Zachary blinked. I beg your pardon? The sacred convergence is not symbolic. It carries political and cultural weight. A queen's bond is a matter of state continuity. He stared at her. I process blood samples. I don't process empires. That may no longer be your choice. Ah, he said faintly. I was afraid you'd say that. She moved toward the main console. We will conduct a secondary verification using Aeleri royal instrumentation. Human systems may be insufficiently refined. That is entirely possible, he said. We once tried to fix a warp stabilizer with duct tape. Her gaze flickered. What is duct tape? You don't want to know. Within minutes, her attendants entered at a silent gesture from her. They carried a compact crystalline device unlike anything in the human lab inventory. It resembled a lattice of transparent filaments woven around a suspended core of pale light. The air seemed to cool as it activated. Zachary stepped back, folding his arms. I assume that's not a portable espresso machine. It is a royal harmonic analyzer, Mara said. It is used only in the confirmation of sovereign bonds. No pressure, then. One attendant extended a slender probe toward Zachary. He sighed and offered his hand. If this ends with me glowing, I'm filing a complaint. The probe pierced his skin with a painless shimmer. A single drop of blood hovered in the air, encapsulated in a field of soft light. Simultaneously, Mara extended her own hand. The attendant repeated the process with reverent precision. The analyzer brightened. Zachary watched as the two droplets drifted toward the core of the device. They did not mix physically. Instead, their electromagnetic signatures expanded, overlapping in translucent waves. The chamber filled with faint, harmonic tones, a layered resonance that vibrated in his bones. That is not subtle, he murmured. The tones intensified, aligning into a singular sustained note that felt almost architectural, as if the sound itself were constructing something unseen. Mara's posture stiffened. Her long ears angled slightly backward, a sign he could not yet interpret, but suspected was significant. The device flared. Light streamed outward in symmetrical arcs, forming an intricate geometric pattern around them. It hovered in midair, a living diagram of compatibility, of mirrored spirals and converging lines. The attendants lowered their gazes. "It confirms," one of them said quietly. Zachary looked from the pattern to the queen. "Confirms what exactly? That the universe has a sense of humor?" "It confirms sacred convergence at sovereign magnitude," the attendant replied. Mara did not speak for several seconds. Her eyes remained fixed on the luminous structure suspended between them. Zachary cleared his throat. "If it helps, I have absolutely no idea how to be a sovereign anything." Her voice, when it came, was softer than before. "Neither did I. At first." He hesitated. "Your Majesty, Mara, may I ask something?" She glanced at him sharply at the informal use of her name, but did not correct him. "If this bond is so absolute," he said carefully, "does it account for personality, for choice, for whether we enjoy the same music? Because I should warn you, I have questionable taste." The faintest hint of amusement touched her expression again. "The bond predicts harmony across neural response patterns, shared cognitive resonance. That sounds suspiciously like destiny with footnotes." "It is science," she said. "Our science. And mine says we are strangers who share compatible proteins." Her gaze held his. "You reduce it. I contextualize it." The geometric light between them pulsed once more before slowly dimming, its pattern embedding itself into the analyzer's crystalline memory. Mara exhaled, a subtle release of tension. "This cannot remain private for long." "That's generally how sovereign magnitude works," he said. "The Illyri Council will demand recognition, and the Human Council will demand explanations." Silence stretched again, but it felt different now. Less shocked, more contemplative. Zachary gestured vaguely at the dormant device. "So, hypothetically, if we ignore destiny for a moment, what would you do?" Her long ears shifted, angling forward this time. "I do not ignore destiny," she said, "but I question interpretation." He smiled faintly. "Now that sounds promising." She met his gaze with steady intensity. "The convergence identifies possibility. It does not command affection." He blinked. "That's surprisingly reasonable." "I am a queen," she said, "not a prisoner of proteins." A breath he had not realized he was holding escaped him. "Good, because I was worried I'd need to propose immediately, and I left my ring in another galaxy." Her composure wavered again, just slightly. "You are insufferable." "I've been told." She stepped closer, studying him as though recalibrating her perception. "Not as a technician now, not merely as data. As of this moment," she said, "you are bound to me by the most sacred metric of my people." "And yet," he replied gently, "we are still just two individuals standing in a lab." "Yes," she said. For the first time since the harmonic spike had appeared, there was something like equilibrium in the room. Not certainty, not romance, but the fragile beginning of something less terrifying than destiny and more intriguing than coincidence. Outside the viewport, the blue star burned on, vast and indifferent. Inside the lab, two strangers regarded each other beneath the quiet hum of machines that insisted they were anything but. Word spread through Genesis Station with the efficiency of a well-designed pathogen. Zachary suspected the central AI had not technically leaked anything, but the sudden increase in polite stares and awkward silences suggested that sovereign magnitude biochemical destiny did not remain confidential for long. He stood in Lab Wing C the following cycle, staring at three separate holographic projections layered in front of him. Human compatibility algorithms, Illyri Royal Harmonic Schematics, and a joint model he had spent the night assembling with Mara's scientific advisor, a tall, silver-robed Illyri named Illith, who regarded him as one might regard an unexpected equation. Mara entered without ceremony this time. Fewer attendants. No crystalline fanfare. Her long ears caught the sterile lab light, casting delicate shadows along her neck. She wore a simplified ceremonial tunic rather than full regalia, though nothing about her presence felt simplified. You have not slept, she observed. I negotiated with statistics until dawn, he replied. They're stubborn negotiators. She stepped beside him, her gaze scanning the projections. Explain. He gestured to the first model. Human compatibility science. We look at genetic markers for immune complementarity, psychological compatibility indices, and pheromonal response patterns. It's probabilistic, not prophetic. She shifted her attention to the second display. And ours is deterministic. Yes, he said, which is where we collide. Your system treats harmonic alignment as inevitable union. Ours treats it as an impressive coincidence that still requires consent forms. Her lips almost curved. Consent forms. We're very fond of them. She studied the merged model, their combined data rendered as interlocking spheres of light. You believe the convergence identifies potential, not fate. I believe it identifies compatibility at a biochemical level, he said carefully, which is extraordinary. But compatibility doesn't automatically equal affection, or trust, or whether you tolerate someone humming off key in the mornings. I do not hum, she said. That's reassuring. One of her ears flicked. He was starting to recognize that motion as restrained amusement rather than irritation. Elith cleared his throat softly from across the room. Your Majesty, the Illyri Council requests an update. They are unsettled. That makes two councils, Zachary muttered. Mara ignored the comment, though her gaze lingered on him briefly. Tell them verification is ongoing. We will not proceed on ritual acknowledgement without full interdisciplinary confirmation. Ilith inclined his head and exited. Zachary exhaled. You're stalling. I am ensuring accuracy, she corrected. Same thing, diplomatically. She turned toward him, expression thoughtful rather than defensive. You assume I wish to delay this outcome. I assume you wish to understand it, he said, which is different. Silence stretched between them, less charged now, more contemplative. Outside the lab viewport, Genesis Station's outer ring rotated slowly, its habitat sectors glittering against the dark. Distant cargo vessels slipped along docking corridors like careful insects. Mara approached the central analyzer. There is a third layer of testing we have not yet conducted. Please tell me it doesn't involve chanting. It involves neural resonance. He blinked. That sounds invasive. It is not surgical, she said dryly. It measures synchronized cognitive response to shared stimuli. So you want to put us in the same machine and see if our brains agree on things? In essence, he considered that. What kind of stimuli? Emotional prompts, ethical dilemmas, strategic problem solving, humor. Humor, he echoed. The convergence predicts not only physiological harmony, but neurochemical alignment. If we respond to stimuli with similar cortical patterns, it strengthens the interpretation. He stared at her. So destiny now includes whether we laugh at the same jokes. In part, that's the most alarming metric so far. A faint breath of what might have been laughter escaped her. It softened the edge of the room. The neural interface chamber was located one level below the medical wing, a circular room lined with adaptive panels that shifted opacity according to stimulus phase. Two reclining chairs faced each other at a measured distance, each surrounded by slender arcs of light-emitting filaments. Zachary eyed the setup. This looks like it was designed by someone who distrusts comfort. It is designed for precision, Mara replied. Precision and mild intimidation. They took their seats. The filaments descended, hovering just above their temples without contact. A soft field engaged, mapping electrical activity. Relax, Mara instructed. I am the picture of relaxation, he said, gripping the armrest. The chamber lights dimmed. First stimulus, visual symmetry. Patterns unfolded across the walls, fractals, mirrored spirals, complex geometric lattices. Zachary felt his mind instinctively tracing their logic. Across from him, Mara's gaze remained steady. The system hummed softly. A projection above them displayed twin neural signatures in real time. Your beta wave activity is rising, she observed calmly. That's because I'm trying not to think about how ridiculous this looks. Second stimulus. Ethical scenario. A simulated crisis appeared. Genesis Station's power grid destabilizing while two sectors required immediate intervention. Resource allocation required sacrifice. Zachary responded instinctively, prioritizing medical wards and life support clusters. Mara's neural pattern mirrored the surge. A small harmonic chime resonated through the chamber. He glanced upward. Was that good? It indicates alignment. Of course it does. Third stimulus. Humor. The panels brightened to display a translated human joke about a malfunctioning android attempting to understand sarcasm. Zachary snorted before he could stop himself. A half-second later, Mara's neural signature spiked in similar regions, though her expression remained composed. "You found that amusing," he said. "It was structurally clever," she replied. "That's the most royal way to describe a joke I've ever heard." Another harmonic tone, stronger this time. The stimuli continued. Music patterns, strategic puzzles, abstract art. With each prompt, their neural oscillations drifted towards synchronization, not perfectly identical, but resonant. Finally, the chamber lights rose. The overhead projection displayed a convergence index nearly as high as their biochemical match. Zachary stared at it. That seems statistically excessive. Mara rose slowly from her chair. Her long ears were angled forward now, alert. "The convergence extends beyond blood," she said quietly. "Our cognitive responses align within remarkable margins." He rubbed his face. "So now it's not just my proteins, it's my brain." "Yes, that feels invasive. It feels precise." He looked at her, really looked at her, not as a queen or a scientific anomaly, but as a person processing the same unsettling data. "Does this frighten you?" he asked. She hesitated, and in that hesitation he saw something unguarded. "It unsettles me," she admitted. "I was raised to trust this system absolutely, yet I have never considered what it means to confront it as an individual." "You mean without ceremony and acquire?" "Yes." He leaned against the console. "For what it's worth, I'm unsettled too. I always assumed my future would involve minor promotions and possibly a houseplant." "A houseplant," she repeated. "I'm ambitious in manageable ways." Her lips curved more visibly this time. It transformed her expression entirely, made her seem less distant, more immediate. "The convergence does not eliminate choice," she said softly. "It reveals probability." "And probability," he replied, "still leaves room for agency." They stood there in the quiet hum of the neural chamber, the weight of shared data pressing in from all sides. Outside, through a narrow viewport, a comet's tail shimmered briefly against the darkness, before dissolving into the star's glare. "You understand," Mara said at last, "that the councils will interpret this as confirmation." "I understand," he said, "but interpretation is not the same as surrender." Her eyes held his. "You do not yield easily," she observed. "I work in a lab," he said. "Nothing yields easily." For a moment, neither spoke. The tension was no longer sharp or panicked. It had shifted into something more complex. Curiosity layered over caution, humor woven through inevitability. "If this bond exists," Zachary said carefully, "perhaps it is not a chain." Her long ears tilted slightly, attentive. "Perhaps," he continued, "it's an invitation." She regarded him in thoughtful silence. "An invitation," she repeated. "To explore," he said, "not to comply." A slow, measured nod followed. "That," she said, "is an interpretation I can consider." And in the faint glow of converging neural graphs, destiny seemed less like a command, and more like a question waiting to be answered. By the time Genesis Station completed another rotation around its borrowed star, the situation had evolved from private scientific anomaly to diplomatic migraine. Zachary discovered this when he stepped into the central promenade and conversations paused mid-sentence. A cluster of human researchers pretended to study a floating advertisement for zero-gravity yoga. Across the walkway, two Illyri delegates inclined their long ears toward him in synchronized curiosity before turning away with theatrical dignity. He sighed. "I should have become a botanist." "Botanists are rarely at the center of sovereign crises," came Mara's voice beside him. He nearly jumped out of his skin. "Your Majesty, do you teleport now?" "No," she replied evenly. You are simply inattentive. She walked beside him along the transparent corridor that curved around the station's inner biosphere. Below them stretched an artificial forest, its trees engineered from hybrid DNA. Martian bark resilience, Terran chlorophyll efficiency, Illyri bioluminescent filaments weaving faint silver light through the leaves. It was meant to symbolize interspecies harmony. At the moment, it felt like a decorative reminder of complexity. You should not move unaccompanied, she said quietly. I'm hardly a strategic asset, he replied, unless someone plans to conquer us with spreadsheets. Her long ears angled slightly back, thoughtful rather than amused. You underestimate your symbolic value. That's usually the safest strategy. They continued walking. Above them, freight drones glided through upper air lanes, their hulls reflecting the glow of the blue star outside the station's shields. The station's internal gravity fluctuated gently as the outer ring recalibrated, a subtle reminder that even stability required constant adjustment. The Human Council has requested clarification, Mara said. Clarification about what? He asked. Whether I intend to annex an empire via blood test? They question the implications of Illyri law. And your council? They view hesitation as dishonor. Zachary winced. That's inconvenient for someone who specializes in hesitation. Mara's gaze remained forward. The sacred convergence is rarely contested. It is treated as revelation. And what are you treating it as? He asked. She did not answer immediately. They reached a balcony overlooking a lake within the biosphere. The water shimmered with engineered plankton that responded to sound, glowing faintly as distant machinery vibrated through the structure. I am treating it as data, she said at last. Data that must be interpreted responsibly. That's the most diplomatic thing I've heard all week. She turned toward him. You believe this is amusing? I believe panic is inefficient, he said, and humor prevents me from hyperventilating in front of royalty. Her lips twitched despite herself. You hyperventilate rarely. Internally, he clarified. A soft chime sounded from her wrist interface. She glanced at it, her expression tightening slightly. The Illyri High Council has arrived in orbit, she said. Of course they have, he replied. Nothing says relaxing research station like interstellar oversight. They will expect formal acknowledgement of the bond. And you? She met his eyes directly. Up close, he could see faint iridescent patterns in her pupils, subtle traces of her species' bioluminescent biology. I expect honesty, she said. Good, he murmured, because I'm not very good at pretending destiny makes me immediately poetic. Her ear flicked forward. You're poetic accidentally. That's concerning. They descended into the biosphere proper. The air was warmer here, scented with engineered blossoms that pulsed gently with stored sunlight. Biomechanical pollinators drifted between branches like small, diligent stars. Mara walked without attendants now. It struck Zachary that this was deliberate, a queen choosing to stand without ceremonial distance. When I was a child, she said, her voice softer, I was told that when my convergence was revealed, I would feel certainty, an immediate recognition. And do you? He asked carefully. She paused beside the glowing lake. The surface responded to her proximity with faint ripples of light. I feel recognition, she admitted, but not certainty. He nodded slowly. Recognition, I understand. When the neural alignment spiked, it didn't feel random. It felt coherent. Yes, but coherence isn't the same as love, he added. No. They stood in silence for a moment, listening to the distant hum of the station's energy grid beneath the simulated wind. Your people, she said, do not use biology to determine partnership. Not officially, he replied. We use bad judgment and shared hobbies. She gave him a look that hovered between disapproval and curiosity. Shared hobbies? Activities that bring mutual enjoyment, he explained, not immune system symmetry. Her lips curved again, more openly this time. You reduce our sacred science to recreation. I'm trying to normalize it, he said gently. For both of us. A sudden vibration tremored through the biosphere. The lake's glow flickered erratically. Above them, one of the biomechanical pollinators spiraled and fell into the water with a faint hiss. Zachary frowned. That's not decorative. Mara's posture shifted instantly, regal composure replaced by sharp alertness. Power fluctuation? Localize, he said, tapping his wrist console. Sector C7. Energy redistribution error. The station lights dimmed briefly before stabilizing. In the distance, a section of the forest canopy glowed too brightly, then faded. Sabotage? She asked. Or overworked infrastructure, he replied. Genesis Station isn't built for royal summits. Another tremor rippled beneath their feet. Mara activated her comm. Security report. Static answered first, then fragmented voices. Zachary's stomach tightened. That's not routine. The lake flared with sudden brightness as excess energy discharged into its surface. Bioluminescent plankton erupted in chaotic patterns. Follow me, he said instinctively. She did not question him. Together they moved toward the control nexus at the biosphere's edge. The corridor lights flickered as they ran, their footsteps echoing against transparent walls that revealed the star's distant blaze. Inside the control room, holographic displays jittered with unstable readings. Energy feedback loop, Zachary muttered, sliding into the central console. Something's rerouting power from the docking ring into the biosphere grid. Mara stood beside him, her presence steady rather than panicked. Can you isolate it? I can try. He worked quickly, fingers dancing across projected keys. Mara leaned closer, scanning the data with sharp precision. There, she said, pointing to a subroutine anomaly. Foreign override code. He followed her indication. That's not ours. Together they initiated a manual override, their movements synchronized without discussion, he rerouting human grid controls, she adjusting the Illyri harmonic stabilizers embedded in the station's newer systems. For a brief moment, their hands hovered over the same interface panel. The energy surge faltered. Another spike, then stabilization. The tremors ceased. The lights steadied into calm luminescence. Silence returned, thick and electric. Zachary exhaled slowly. Well, that was exciting. Mara's gaze remained fixed on the now stable display. You anticipated my adjustments. You anticipated mine, he replied. She turned toward him. The earlier neural tests echoed in his mind. The shared ethical responses, the synchronized problem-solving. That, he said quietly, wasn't just protein alignment. No, she agreed. Footsteps echoed as security teams flooded the corridor outside. Mara straightened, queen once more, though something in her expression had shifted. In crisis, she said softly, we moved as if rehearsed. Maybe destiny comes with practice sessions, he offered. A faint laugh escaped her, clear, unguarded, almost startling in its warmth. You are incorrigible, she said. And yet, he replied, remarkably compatible. Her long ears angled forward, no longer defensive, no longer uncertain. Beyond the station's shields, the blue star burned on, indifferent to councils and convergence. Inside the control room, amid stabilizing energy fields and fading alarm lights, two figures stood closer than they had before. Not bound by decree, but joined by something quieter and perhaps more convincing than inevitability. The official report labeled it a localized energy redistribution anomaly, which was a refined way of saying someone had tried to reroute half the station's power grid through a decorative forest. Zachary read the summary twice and decided he preferred the dramatic version. He stood in the medical wing overlooking a row of transparent recovery pods where a handful of minorly injured technicians floated in suspension fields. Nothing fatal, a few burns. One sprained wrist sustained while heroically tripping over nothing. Genesis Station, like most advanced human constructs, prided itself on resilience. It also prided itself on optimism. The latter was occasionally less reliable. Mara entered the wing without attendance again. Her presence drew glances from staff, but no one approached her. News of the stabilization effort had circulated. So had the fact that she and Zachary had executed the override simultaneously, as though following a shared script. You should be resting, she said. I am resting, he replied, leaning against a diagnostics console. This is my relaxed posture. You have been awake for 27 standard hours? I work in medicine. Sleep is a theoretical luxury. Her long ears angled slightly downward, not in reprimand but concern. The sabotage was deliberate, she said quietly. Security has confirmed foreign code fragments in the grid. From where? Unknown origin. The signature does not match Ailery or human encryption. That's reassuring, he muttered. Mysterious third parties are my favorite. She stepped closer to the recovery pods, watching as the fields adjusted around a drifting engineer. They intended to destabilize the biosphere, she said. A symbolic target, interspecies harmony reduced to malfunction. Subtle message, he replied. Very poetic. Her gaze shifted to him. You continue to mask unease with humor. It's either that or pacing dramatically, he said. And I don't have a cape. A faint breath escaped her, almost laughter. You coordinated with me instinctively, she said after a moment. You did the same. She studied him as if the answer might be written beneath his skin. In crisis, she continued, our responses aligned without verbal exchange. Neural resonance, he said. Shared ethical prioritization. Or coincidence. You no longer believe in coincidence. That's a bold assumption. She tilted her head slightly. Is it? He hesitated. The memory of their hands hovering over the same interface flickered in his mind. The way their adjustments had meshed seamlessly, preventing cascade failure. I believe in data, he said finally, and the data keeps being inconvenient. Her lips curved. A comm alert sounded overhead. Emergency triage request, sector docking ring 3. Zachary straightened. That doesn't sound resolved? Mara's posture sharpened instantly. Aftershock? Or phase 2, he replied. They moved together down the corridor, boots striking in rhythm against the metallic floor. The docking ring was a labyrinth of cargo holds and transit tubes, its outer wall a reinforced viewport, framing the endless dark. When they arrived, smoke from an overloaded conduit drifted lazily through the air. A cargo shuttle hung crookedly in its berth. Docking clamps misaligned. Magnetic stabilizers overloaded, a human engineer called out. We're losing anchor tension. Zachary assessed the situation quickly. If the clamps failed, the shuttle would tear free and collide with the adjacent ring. Mara stepped beside him. Manual override. Remote's jammed, the engineer replied. Sabotage again. Zachary's eyes darted across the console. We'll have to recalibrate locally. That requires synchronized input from both sides of the berth, the engineer warned. 2 consoles, simultaneous command. Mara met Zachary's gaze. He exhaled. Of course it does. They split without discussion. He vaulted onto the maintenance platform at Console A, while she ascended the opposite side with fluid grace. On my mark, he called. I am prepared, she replied. The shuttle groaned as magnetic fields fluctuated erratically. 3, he said, fingers hovering. 2. Wait, she interrupted. Your panel is offset by 4 degrees. He glanced at the calibration. She was right. Adjusting, he muttered. Now, she said. They engaged simultaneously. The clamps flared with blue light. The shuttle shuddered violently before snapping back into alignment. A shock wave rippled through the docking ring, but the berth stabilized. Silence followed. Then applause. From relieved engineers who had not expected royalty to manually wrestle magnetic stabilizers. Zachary slid down from the platform. Well, that was invigorating. Mara descended more gracefully. You hesitated at my interruption, she observed. I trust your calculations, he replied. Apparently. Her long ears angled forward, attentive. Trust, she repeated. He shrugged. You've been right every time so far. Statistically speaking, you're a good bet. That is not how my people describe partnership. It's how mine describe teamwork. She regarded him thoughtfully as the engineers resumed diagnostics. Your culture separates destiny from cooperation, she said. Usually, he answered, though we're flexible when necessary. A junior officer approached cautiously. Your Majesty, the High Council has requested immediate transmission. They are concerned. Concern is an understatement, Zachary murmured. Mara inclined her head. Prepare the chamber. As they walked toward the central transmission hall, the station's lighting shifted into evening cycle, dimming slightly to simulate circadian rhythm. Through the outer viewport, the blue star flared in a distant solar pulse, its radiation caught and filtered by the station's shields. You understand, Mara said quietly, that some will interpret these coordinated responses as further confirmation of sacred convergence. And some will interpret it as efficient crisis management, he replied. And you? He considered the question longer this time. I interpret it as interesting, he said finally. We function well together under pressure. That's rare. Her expression softened. In Illyri history, she said, there are records of bonded pairs who never faced adversity together. Their harmony remained theoretical. And Therion, he said, isn't very persuasive. No. They reached the transmission chamber. A circular platform awaited, surrounded by holographic projectors that would render the High Council in towering light. Zachary paused before stepping inside. You don't have to do this alone, he said. Her eyes searched his face. You are not yet bound by our law, she said. I'm bound by common sense, he replied, and by the fact that I was present for half the data. One corner of her mouth lifted. Stand beside me, she said. The chamber lights dimmed. Holographic figures of Illyri elders materialized around them, their long ears adorned with ceremonial filaments. Mara, intoned the central projection, we have reviewed preliminary reports. The convergence is verified. It is verified biologically and neurologically, she replied steadily. Then the sacred bond must be acknowledged. Mara's gaze did not waver. The convergence identifies extraordinary compatibility, she said, but compatibility is not coercion. A ripple of disapproval passed through the projections. Zachary remained silent, resisting the urge to comment on coercive proteins. The human technician has proven alignment in crisis, another elder said. The bond strengthens our future. It strengthens potential, Mara corrected. Potential requires cultivation. The elders regarded Zachary then, their luminous eyes assessing. You, one addressed him directly, do you accept the bond? Zachary swallowed. I accept the data, he said carefully. I accept that our biology aligns in ways that are statistically absurd. But I believe partnership is built through shared action, not declared by test results. Murmurs echoed through the chamber. Mara's long ears angled slightly toward him, not in warning, but in quiet solidarity. The sacred convergence has revealed possibility, she said firmly. I will not reduce it to obligation. The projections flickered, unsettled but silent. Outside the chamber, the station's systems hummed in stable rhythm once more. Inside, amid ancient tradition and modern science, two figures stood side by side, not defying destiny, but redefining it. As the transmission concluded and the holograms dissolved into light, Zachary exhaled. Well, he said softly, that went better than expected. Mara turned to him, her expression no longer distant, no longer uncertain. Yes, she said, it did. And for the first time since a harmonic spike had upended their routines, the crisis felt less like an external force and more like a path they were choosing to walk. Step by deliberate step, crisis by shared crisis. Not because blood demanded it, but because something quieter and more resilient was beginning to form between them. The official calm that settled over Genesis Station felt suspiciously organized. After the docking ring incident and the High Council transmission, security presence doubled, system audits tripled, and gossip multiplied at an exponential rate. Zachary found it impressive that in a station built on logic, rumors traveled faster than light. He stood in the upper observation dome, staring out at the blue star through layered radiation shields. Solar flares rippled across its surface like slow-motion storms. The shields translated lethal energy into faint, shimmering curtains of light that danced across the transparent ceiling. You prefer to think near large, volatile objects, Mara's voice said behind him. I find them relatable, he replied without turning. They look stable from a distance. She stepped beside him. The dome lights traced faint highlights along her dark hair, accentuating the elegant curve of her long ears. She had dismissed most of her attendants for the evening cycle, an act that had already unsettled at least 3 protocol officers. The station is quieter tonight, she said. Quieter, he agreed, which means someone is planning something. You assume sabotage continues. I assume unresolved variables rarely retire voluntarily. She folded her hands behind her back, adopting the posture of a ruler surveying territory. Security traced fragments of the override code. It originated from a non-aligned research vessel that docked briefly before the convergence announcement. Convenient timing, he muttered. The vessel departed hours before the energy surge. So either they left a gift behind, he said, or someone on board our station has excellent timing. Her gaze shifted toward him. You suspect internal interference. I suspect complexity, he replied. And I've learned recently that complexity rarely behaves politely. A faint smile touched her lips. You describe destiny as though it were a malfunction. Destiny showed up unannounced with paperwork, he said. That feels like a system error. She watched the solar flare pulse against the shield. In Illyri archives, she said slowly, there are records of convergences that did not result in union. He glanced at her. I thought it was absolute. It is rare, she said, but not absolute. Define rare. Less than one in several thousand sovereign bonds. That's statistically rebellious, he said. Her long ears angled slightly back, thoughtful rather than defensive. In those cases, the individuals chose separation. Chose, he repeated carefully. Yes. The word lingered between them, heavier than the neural resonance charts, heavier than the harmonic analyzer's geometric light. So your people don't treat the bond as a cage, he said. No, she replied. They treat it as sacred potential, but potential can be declined. He exhaled slowly. That's important information you could have mentioned earlier. I needed to confirm it, she said quietly. I did not wish to offer you false reassurance. He studied her profile in the glow of the star. Were you reassuring me? I was clarifying that you are not imprisoned by my biology. That's generous of you. It is factual. He leaned against the railing. Then let's talk honestly. She turned fully toward him. I don't deny the data, he continued. Our biochemical alignment is absurd. Our neural responses sync like we rehearse them. We handle crisis like we've been paired for years. That's not nothing. No, she said softly. But I don't want to become a symbol before I understand what this is, he said. I don't want to wake up one morning as a diplomatic artifact. Her gaze held his steadily. You fear losing autonomy. Yes. And you fear disappointing my people. He hesitated. I don't enjoy disappointing anyone. A faint warmth entered her expression. Zachary, she said, using his name with deliberate clarity, the convergence did not choose you to be an artifact. It revealed alignment. What you become from that alignment remains yours to shape. That's reassuringly non-tyrannical. I am not a tyrant. I've noticed. Silence settled again, but it felt less strained now. More like shared reflection than unresolved tension. A subtle vibration rippled through the dome floor. Zachary stiffened. That wasn't atmospheric. Mara's posture sharpened instantly. Internal systems? He tapped his wrist console. A grid schematic flickered into view. Communication array fluctuation, he said. Upper ring. Another tremor. The star's light shimmered through the shields as if reacting to internal imbalance. Not another biosphere event, he muttered. They moved swiftly toward the lift. As it descended, Mara spoke without looking at him. If this sabotage is connected to our convergence, it is not coincidence. Agreed, he said. Someone thinks destiny is politically inconvenient, or valuable enough to destabilize. The lift doors opened to controlled chaos. Technicians rushed between consoles as holographic displays flickered. Signal jamming across 3 sectors, a human communications officer reported. Encrypted bursts targeting council channels. Mara stepped forward, authority radiating without effort. Trace origin. Source masked, the officer replied. Internal relay. Zachary scanned the data stream. It's piggybacking on our joint neural testing logs. She looked at him sharply. Our data? Yes, the convergence metrics are being transmitted in fragments. To whom? She demanded. Unknown, the officer said. Signal scattering beyond standard range. Zachary's jaw tightened. Someone's trying to weaponize the bond. The room went quiet. Can you shut it down? Mara asked. I can attempt a manual block, he said, but it requires synchronized override again. Her eyes met his. Of course it does, she said softly. They moved to adjacent consoles. On my signal, he said. She nodded. The data stream surged, spiking unpredictably. The harmonic graphs of their bond flickered across the main display, distorted and fragmented. Now, she said. They engaged the override simultaneously. Zachary rerouted the human encryption channels while Mara injected Illyri harmonic dampeners into the stream. The sabotage code resisted, splintering into multiple threads. Persistent, he muttered. Then we persist more, she replied. They adjusted in tandem, anticipating each other's corrections without verbal instruction. The jamming signal weakened. Almost, he said. The final fragment attempted one last burst. Left channel, third relay, she said quickly. He adjusted. The signal collapsed. Silence. The displays steadied into calm data streams. The communications officer exhaled audibly. Transmission halted. Zachary leaned back, pulse racing. Someone really doesn't want us figuring this out quietly. Mara stepped beside him, her long ears angled forward, alert but composed. They fear what our alignment represents, she said. Or they want to control the narrative, he replied. She studied the stabilized logs. You see how easily our data becomes leverage. Which is why we decide what it means, he said. Her gaze shifted to him slowly. You speak as if this is shared responsibility. It is, he said. Your bond, my blood, our mess. For a moment, something unspoken passed between them. Not the electric shock of destiny, not the statistical glow of compatibility, but something steadier. Zachary, she said quietly, if the convergence had never been revealed, would you have noticed me? He blinked at the unexpected vulnerability in her voice. I noticed you the first day you corrected my calibration frequency without looking at the manual, he admitted. That was intimidating. A soft breath escaped her, almost a laugh. And if there were no councils, no sabotage, no sacred metrics, she pressed. He considered carefully. I would still want to understand why we work so well together, he said. That curiosity would exist regardless of tradition. Her shoulders relaxed slightly. That, she said, is not destiny. That is choice. He nodded. Good, Ian, he replied. Because I prefer invitations to commands. The communications room hummed back to routine operation around them. Outside the station's shields, the blue star flared once more. Distant, brilliant, indifferent. Inside, amid encrypted channels and intercepted sabotage, the convergence no longer felt like an unstoppable decree. It felt like a possibility they were actively defending, not because they were bound by inevitability, but because they were beginning to choose it. Genesis Station had a way of pretending nothing extraordinary had happened. The biosphere lights returned to their carefully calibrated glow. Docking rings hummed in balanced rotation. The communication arrays, recently purged of stolen convergence fragments, transmitted only sanctioned data and mild bureaucratic anxiety. The saboteur, it turned out, had not been a mysterious empire, nor a shadow fleet. It had been a private consortium of biocorporate opportunists, non-aligned researchers who believed that if Illyri and human genetic resonance could be quantified and weaponized, entire markets could be cornered. They had planted override code during a brief docking, intending to extract and broadcast the sovereign magnitude alignment before either council could control the narrative. Security intercepted the final data packet. The vessel was detained at the outer ring by a joint human-Illyri patrol, a rare show of coordinated authority that carried its own quiet symbolism. Romance is intellectual property, Zachary muttered when he read the report. That's a new low. Mara stood beside him in the command chamber overlooking the detention feed. They saw our convergence as leverage. They underestimated our stubbornness, he replied, her long ears angled slightly forward. They underestimated our cooperation. He glanced at her. That word no longer startled him. The High Council reconvened 3 cycles later, this time with both species representatives physically present in the central chamber of Genesis Station. No holograms, no fragmented transmissions. The air felt heavier, more deliberate. Zachary stood at the edge of the circular floor, hands clasped behind his back, resisting the urge to look like someone who processed blood for a living. Across from him, the Illyri elders shimmered in ceremonial silver. The human council members sat rigidly, expressions oscillating between diplomatic neutrality and profound curiosity. Mara stood at the center. She wore formal regalia this time, luminous threads woven through dark fabric, a subtle crown resting against her hair. It did not overwhelm her, it clarified her. The sacred convergence between myself and technician Zachary Hunt is verified across biochemical and neural metrics, she began, her voice steady, carrying through the chamber without amplification. It is sovereign magnitude. A ripple moved through the Illyri side. Approval, anticipation. She did not rush. Our history teaches that such resonance is destiny, she continued. But history also teaches that destiny without consent becomes tyranny. The chamber stilled. The sabotage attempt demonstrated that our bond can be exploited, she said. It can be politicized, commodified, distorted. Zachary felt every gaze shift subtly toward him. We will not allow that, she said firmly. The convergence identifies potential. It does not command submission. An Illyri elder stepped forward. Your Majesty, sacred convergence is foundation of our lineage. It is foundation, she agreed. Not prison. Silence deepened. Zachary stepped forward when she inclined her head slightly, an invitation rather than instruction. I am human, he said, his voice steady despite the weight of the moment. We are suspicious of inevitability. We like to argue with it. A faint ripple of restrained amusement moved through the human council. I cannot deny the data, he continued. Our compatibility is extraordinary. In crisis, we operate as if pre-aligned. But partnership in my culture is built, not declared. Mara's gaze did not leave him. I do not reject the convergence, he said. I reject the idea that it eliminates choice. An Illyri counselor studied him intently. Would you refuse the bond? He paused, feeling the gravity of that question settle across species. No, he said honestly, but I will not accept it as obligation. I accept it as invitation. Mara's long ears angled forward, open. And I, she said, stepping beside him, accept that invitation. The chamber did not erupt. It shifted. A subtle recalibration, like a station correcting orbit. The eldest Illyri present inclined his head slowly. Then the sacred convergence shall be acknowledged as chosen union, not enforced decree. Human representatives exchanged glances, relief mixing with cautious optimism. A new precedent was recorded that day, not only in Illyri archives, but in the diplomatic charter of Genesis Station. After the assembly dissolved, the corridors felt strangely lighter. Zachary walked beside Mara toward the biosphere, where the engineered forest glowed softly under evening simulation. Well, he said, we just reinterpreted ancient destiny in front of two governments. Yeah, she replied calmly. No pressure. You handled it well. I didn't faint. That's my standard for success. Her laughter came more easily now, unguarded and bright. They reached the lake where bioluminescent plankton pulsed gently beneath the surface. The station is stable, she said. The saboteurs are detained. The councils have accepted our interpretation. Which means the crisis is technically over, he said. Yes. He looked at her, not as anomaly, not as sovereign variable, but as the woman whose neural patterns aligned with his in puzzles and panic alike. When I first saw that harmonic spike, he admitted, I felt cornered, like my life had been decided by a protein. And now, she asked softly, now I feel curious, he said, less like I was drafted into something, more like I'm stepping into it. Her long ears angled slightly outward, relaxed. I was raised to believe the convergence would feel like certainty, she said. It does not. He smiled faintly. Good. It feel, she continued, like alignment discovered over time. Even better. A gentle wind simulation stirred the leaves overhead. The lake shimmered. In Illyri tradition, she said, a bonded pair shares a ceremonial vow before their people. That sounds formal. It is. He hesitated. Do we have to schedule that immediately? Her lips curved. You are apprehensive. I prefer gradual existential shifts, he said. She stepped closer, not ceremonially, not politically, simply closer. There is no urgency, she said. The convergence does not expire. Convenient. She reached out, not to claim, not to command, but to rest her hand lightly against his. The contact was warm, steady, real. No algorithm dictated this gesture, she said quietly. Good, he replied, because I didn't calibrate for it. Her laughter echoed softly across the water. Above them, the blue star burned on, constant, immense, indifferent to councils and corporations. Genesis Station continued its careful orbit, shields shimmering, systems balanced. Zachary glanced up at the stars beyond the shielded dome. I used to think destiny was something that happened to people, he said. And now, she asked? Now I think it's something you negotiate with. She considered that, her gaze following his toward the vast dark. Then we will negotiate it together, she said. Not because blood demanded it, not because tradition insisted, but because across sabotage and scrutiny, neural spikes and magnetic surges, they had chosen to stand side by side, not as artifact and sovereign, not as predetermined symbols, but as two individuals who had looked at impossible data and decided to build something human, and alieri from it. The lake glowed brighter for a moment, reflecting their silhouettes in soft, luminous patterns. And for once, the universe did not feel like a command. It felt like an open horizon,